Well, that escalated quickly. Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory, the show that's here to spit rhymes and solve mysteries, and we're all out of rhymes. First, a quick note as we get started today. This week starts my campaign to try and be named as a guest host on Jeopardy! Full details are over on this week's film theory, I'll link to it right here, but the long and short of it is that I really want to host this thing. It's been a childhood dream of mine to just, stand up on that stage for like one episode, and if people like Dr. Oz can host this thing, then why not an edutainment YouTuber like myself, or any of the other actual edutubers that are here on the platform. I think a digital creator deserves their chance to step behind that podium and show the world what they got. Get this industry a bit more respect and, you know what, give me a chance to actually live out a childhood dream that helped inspire the creation of these channels. Anyway, if you think a YouTuber like me deserves their shot, well, I need you to sign the petition below. It's linked in the description. I need about 300,000 signatures at minimum, because that's what it took for LeVar Burton to get tapped for 5 episodes. So if we have a shot, we need to crush those numbers. So thank you guys so much for your help. Fingers crossed that something happens, or you know what, if not, just gives us more opportunity to complain about how traditional media just doesn't get it. Thank you so much. Now on with today's episode. And I know what you're thinking, another Friday Night Funkin' theory? Didn't you already do 2 of these and the game isn't even in its full state? But before you turn away, this isn't the theory that you might think it is. This is actually about something far bigger, something far more sinister than Friday Night Funkin'. See, today we're looking at a massive ARG mystery that came out of the Friday Night Funkin' mod community. In case you're not familiar, a game mod is anytime someone's been able to manipulate the game's code to change how it behaves and looks, sometimes even creating entirely new stories and gameplay modes. And to be honest, some of the world's biggest games actually started off as mods. The incredibly difficult Kaizo Mario series, mods of Super Mario World. Both League of Legends and Dota have their origins in a mod for Blizzard's game Warcraft 3. Even PUBG and DayZ started their lives as mods of the Arma series. If you've ever bothered to watch me over on the GT Live channel, you'll know that I love playing fan games and mods because to me, that's just where you get some of the most creative, exciting ideas coming from new game designers who are still learning their craft. But I tend not to cover them here because, well, they're fan-made. The lore isn't canon and their quality can really vary wildly. But today is the exception because there's one mod of Friday Night Funkin' that, went a bit off the rails, creating not just a few good songs to extend the life of this game, but a fully blown lore of its own hidden behind layers of coded messages spanning across all corners of the internet. It is scary, it's mysterious, and it is mad. Loyal theorists, it's time we talk about literally every FNF mod ever versus Bob Week. Yes, that is the actual full title of this thing. Earlier this year, the mod was everywhere. I think part of the reason it gained so much attention is because it's actually designed as a parody of other Friday Night Funkin' mods. Crudely drawn characters, clunky, crass dialogue, and memes. All the memes. There's a fart sound effect button because it's so lol random. We go up against the little man whose bonus song is nearly 8 minutes straight of breaking glass, bras, a dancing "Ayo, there's pizza here" meme, and Spotify ads.
Want a break from the ads? If you tap now, you'll receive 30 minutes of ad-free music.
There's even a character named Ron who is literally a dancing meme folder. His song, when cranked up to 1.75 speed, by the way, is my favorite to come out of anything Friday Night Funkin' related. Not gonna lie, thing is a bop.
This is a certified...
But the real star of this 2-part mod is Bob, a basic black and white animated character who Boyfriend compares to Dream. And I gotta admit, it's not entirely wrong. I could definitely see the family resemblance. Anyway, the mod uses the same basic progression that you'd expect from a Friday Night Funkin' mod. Boyfriend is introduced to a new challenger, each song becomes slightly harder, tap arrows to win. Except Bob is a little bit different. Sure, after you beat him the first time, he becomes a little mad bro, but if you beat him again, things go insane. Bob becomes consumed by his anger and transforms into a black blob with photorealistic eyes, teleporting himself, boyfriend, and girlfriend to what can only be assumed as some sort of hellscape. Or at least, that's what we assume. The devs apparently couldn't afford to pay for the cutscene that shows us that part. At this point, there's a huge spike in difficulty as the game just becomes one big creepypasta. Bob's eyes flash across the screen, you struggle through, and if you manage to make it to the end of the song, it just kinda ends. Fortunately for us though, there's a part 2. A few months after part 1's release, the Bob mod got itself a sequel titled Bob's Onslaught, where Bob shows shows us that he suddenly has control over the game. He makes parts of the UI disappear, elements spin around, he moves the game window, ads open up blocking the player's view, and through it all the notes come at an inhuman rate. This thing is crazy, and if you somehow manage to beat this insanely difficult challenge, the screen goes black. Bob claims that he has no more tricks for you here, but then things glitch and reveal a Google Drive link, and this, friends, is where it gets real weird. Now, this part of the game seems to have been mainly overlooked on YouTube in favor of the fast and nearly impossible gameplay, but you know me, who am I to ignore some random link given to me by a stranger? I followed the link, and boy oh boy, things go way, way deeper than you first thought. So what's really going on with the Bob mod? Let's find out. When we jump into the drive, we find a slew of documents, images, and sound files for us to investigate. The drive appears to be owned by someone called Lennon Noah, and by searching through the files, we start to get a sense of who this guy really is. Looking at the file of Noah family expenses, we learn that this is a family of 3. Father Lennon, wife Jess, daughter Jane. Another file titled Dear Lennon starts to reveal to us that the family is in trouble. Jess has fears that her husband is starting to grow distant from the family. We learn from another file, Lennon's writings, that the day after the letter was written, Jess and Lennon are on the rocks. She doesn't believe him about something, but what? Well, by jumping back and forth between all the different files, we can actually assemble a timeline of events. A few days after Jess and Lennon's fight, we see that Lennon has been blocked from spending family finances after buying a book called How to Clean Carpets, which was prompted from a, quote, liquid accident at work. The next day, he's fired from his job, as evidenced by the pink slip that's found in the folder. And it's here where we just start to get an idea of what Lennon's been up to. Quote, look man, I don't know what this weird goop in your office is, but you can't do this on company grounds. You barely do work, and you're always too busy with your AI side projects to do any work. Lennon also mentions a lot of these same things in his writings on the same day. Quote again, these experiments have to work. I've done so much with this goo, it has to work. This AI I've created, I love him so much. He is so smart. I have to bring him to our realm. He will be beautiful. An AI, mysterious goo, coming to our realm. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves an Afton.
Afton alert. Afton alert.
Loyal theorists, we've done this dance enough times to know that this is not gonna end well. Lennon is clearly trying to bring his AI Bob to life using some sort of organic goo. The picture labeled unknown inside the file practically confirms this for us. As we see in the black goo, the letters B-O-B. So, is that it? All done? Case closed, friends? Oh no. This is just the beginning. There's still 4 files left. A sound file called Plant, a picture file and document called Jane's Drawing and Jane, and finally a picture called you get the point. And it's here that things start to change from a little story Easter egg to one of the most creative, fully blown ARGs that I've covered on the channel. Let's start with the audio file Plant. And if you have headphones, you might want to turn the volume down very briefly. I just want to give you a taste of what this thing sounds like, because it's pretty unusual, but also a bit sharp and piercing. Sounds like it could be Morse code, right? Or maybe plugging it into a spectrogram will give us an image. We've done both of those methods solving mysteries in the past, but nope, not this time. Neither of those will actually result in anything. This is actually something that's a little bit more complicated. The giveaway of what this is are those high-pitched beepings that happen at a regular occurrence. They're indicative of something called a slow scan television signal, basically a way to send and receive pictures via radio waves. If you see a spectrogram that looks a little something like this, with a header that sounds different, that's used to calibrate the signal, and then a repeated series of pulses that are used to synchronize the signal, you know that you're likely dealing with an SSTV feed. So let's just listen to the audio file briefly one last time so you can hear that header and also identify those synchronizing pulses. Pretty cool, right? Okay, we're now officially done with obnoxious audio files, so you can set your headphones back to normal. Now, in the early days of space exploration, SSTV was actually used to transmit images of the far side of the moon. Nowadays, it's not really used that much since, you know, you can just send an email attachment. And I gotta say, honestly, in all my lore hunting and ARG solving, it's the first time that I've ever really encountered this method of clue solving, so really awesome job there, developers. A+ for creativity, just really stellar. How do you solve this sort of thing? Luckily, there are online converters. Converting it, we get the following picture. Next up is the DDD file, which is much simpler. It's just a squashed image of a URL that's missing a few letters, which leads to a website that seems like it's all about the memes, but actually contains another piece of information. Using the classic technique of upping the contrast levels, we find that down in the bottom right it says justnoahspage.card.co, which contains a link to an audio file called Dispatch. This one isn't ear-splitting like Plant was, so here's a clip that you can listen to. You can hear a robotic voice reading out a long string of unrelated words. This is actually a code written in what's called the NATO alphabet, A, Alpha, B, Bravo, C, Charlie, etc. It's a type of spelling alphabet, basically as a way to spell something over audio-only signals without the letters getting confused with each other, since, a lot of them sound alike. The result gives you this absolutely glorious phrase, Ed Mookshehi. You know what, I'm just gonna put it up here on the screen because it's a bunch of gobbledygook. Clearly, there is more here that needs to be solved, so what? Is it base 64? Is it a substitution cipher? Maybe a Visionaire cipher for feeling spicy? Nope, again, none of the usual suspects work. I told you, this was a really creative, really wild mystery. I was stumped until I looked at the other clues that were left in the folder. One of the last things that we haven't talked about is the file Jane, and honestly, there's a reason why. It's just the daughter's homework assignment, and let's just say it's not gonna get a grade worthy of hanging up on the refrigerator. Throughout the page, we see Jane making a bunch of misspellings, saying that she's learning the alphabet, notably leaving off the last letter of her practice alphabets, the Z on the first and the A on the second. Something tells me that teacher's gonna have to break out the red pen when grading this one, but teacher Matt Pat's here and ready to give her an A+, because all of those missing letters and misspellings are a whole lot of ARG red flags. The only question is, what do they mean? Well, Jane says that her favorite game is Foursquare, with a hyphen, and that is our biggest clue of all. You see, there's a type of puzzle called a four-square cipher that involves 4 squares of letters, ideally arranged in a grid of 5 by 5. The eagle-eyed among you may have already worked out that a 5 by 5 grid works out to 25 letters, but there are 26 letters in the alphabet. And this is when you realize that's why Jane's alphabet leaves a letter out of each one, which means it's time to make the squares. The forward alphabet will go in the upper right-hand corner, and the backward cipher will actually go into the bottom left. In the other 2 blocks, we'll use a standard alphabet with I and J combined, which is a traditional way to solve these sorts of puzzles. And yeah, we have ourselves a giant grid of letters. Now what? Well, now it's time for that handy phrase from earlier, where we're gonna use it like coordinate points, taking each 2-letter section to find points in our new grid. As an example, we start with the letters E and D. To decode this, we actually need to find the E in our first ciphertext box in the top right, and D in our second ciphertext box in the bottom left. Now we see where those 2 overlap in our plain alphabets to get the letter C. We do this again in the lower alphabet block to get the letter Z. This makes the first part of the deciphered text to be CZ. MU becomes LH, CX becomes CC, and so on and so on and so on until we end up with something that barely looks better than what we started with. Notice the repeated word capital and the equals at the end? Well, if we take the capitals and turn the letter after it into a capital letter and the equals at the end into an equal sign, we get something that looks closer to this. Now it is finally in base 64, which means there's one last step to decoding it, but you also have to lose that X at the end because it was just a placeholder to make sure that the text worked out properly. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of smaller details here. Long story short, you eventually wind up with a paste bin link that leads you to another Google Drive. This one is ominously titled Case File, and it finally gives us the information we needed to have a complete picture of everything that happened. From reading the files, we learned that the black goo wasn't enough to bring Bob back to life. He needed a host. So Lennon pulled a Norman Osborn and tested it on himself. When that wasn't enough, he took his wife and child with the sole purpose of sacrificing them to Bob, as confirmed by the character profile file. However, that document also reveals something else. A few days later, his daughter Jane was found covered in black goo, heavily disfigured and in a coma, but still alive. Apparently, she wasn't fit to be the host for Bob, and she escaped, but Jess and Lennon remain missing. And that's where the story ends. There's still some clues that don't have places, like the SSTV signal image doesn't really connect to anything, and a symbols image that appears in the folder entitled Evidence, but weirdly, this does seem to be the end of the story. And then, of course, as I was writing the script, something new was added to the mystery. The developers asked for it to stop. Now, clearly visible in the original Google Drive folder is a subfolder labeled ARG Spoilers. The developers go over all the story details and then clearly state Lennon has nothing to do with the canon of Bob Mod or FNF. Sorry for the weird ARG. See, according to the developers, the ARG started as something small, just some inside jokes in the source code of the game that led them to think that they could make a full ARG. Soon they had accomplished exactly what they wanted, but in their words, quote, it eventually started to grow in popularity and started taking a toll on the ARG devs' mental state. I just wanted to get this thing to a close so I can put my mind at ease. As someone who's worked on multiple ARGs in the past, I can totally understand this. Things very easily get out of hand very quickly. But I still wanted to do this episode to bring this whole thing to light because this was, without exaggeration, one of the most clever ARG experiences I've yet seen online. It also answered a lot of questions regarding the sinister nature of the Bob Mod, which I thought was really cool, even even if it doesn't wind up being official canon. And lastly, this note made me think maybe things aren't quite done with Bob. You see, they say that the ARG has nothing to do with Bob's in-game lore, but there is still one thing I haven't covered. If you beat the first Bob mod on hard mode, you're given a web address. Bob is mad. This page gives you some clues to find a second website, and then another, and another, and another. You end up at a site where it tells you that Bob is happy you get here. Seems sweet, but a problem occurs if you keep digging. There's a hexadecimal code at the bottom of the page, and decoding it leads you to yet another webpage where Bob states, "What? How you here? I am angry." If you keep going by solving binary, Morse, and base 64 codes, Bob gets madder and madder until he gets covered in goo and disappears. Leaving the message, you do realize what you've done. The devs learned that Bob doesn't like people looking into his origins, and when they do, he disappears to claim that person as his next victim. So in some weird way, the ARG being called over may actually just be another part of the ARG. I don't really think it is, but from a story perspective, there's truly no way to canonically end this ARG without it feeling like an actual legit part of the lore, because the ARG and finding out about Bob's past is just part of that process. Kind of like a weird catch-22 scenario. Anyway, Bob clearly likes attention. He wants people to play with him, but he doesn't want those people to look into his backstory. And when they do, he hops over to his new host. And so now here we are talking about him. Is that a good thing? Are we making him happy? Or by talking about his past, are we making him mad? Anyway, the whole thing's over now and it wasn't canon anyway, so it really shouldn't matter.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Matt was a father, a husband, a friend. He'll truly be missed now that he's become one with the black goo. Before he left us, he asked me to share a few words with you. The Raycon Everyday Earbuds are the best earbuds he's ever owned. That's right, this eulogy is an ad read for our sponsor, Raycon. Folks, the Raycon earbuds are the premium audio solution you need that comes in at half the price of other premium earbuds. Though, I'll tell you right now, my favorite part is the fact they stay in my ears no matter what I'm doing. Been consumed by evil black goo? That's fine. They're still gonna fit in your ears as you're slowly assimilated into the hive mind.
Dad, I don't think this is the time for that.
Don't worry, it's fine. My Raycon earbuds have 32 hours of battery life, meaning I can listen to the Friday Night Funkin soundtrack all the way until my cells break down into a gelatinous evil. And if you're not satisfied, which would be insane, they come with a 45-day money-back guarantee. And it doesn't stop there. Raycon is hooking up the Theorists community with 15% off when you head to buyraycon.com/MattPat. That's buyraycon.com/MATPAT. Or click the link on the top line of the description.
Oh, that is a pretty sweet deal.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm currently being eaten by the black goo. Click the link!